So in the first 5 years of the accelerator to 2009, 2014, I don't think we invested $500,000 across 40 companies.
Okay.
Because it's $15K a piece.
Right.
It's no money.
No money at all.
It's no money. We decide we're going to increase our investment to $100K. Okay, great. 100K, 150K. And in year one, 2015, we raised a total of $1 million. And the next year we raised a little over $2 million.
Yeah.
And the next year we raised our first, significant fund, $20 million.
Welcome to the I'm Josh Saying podcast. This is episode 2. I know you all had a great time listening to episode 1. We had Marcus Johnson talking about finances for 2022, and it went crazy on the internet. It was very controversial, but we had a great time. And I have a special guest. A brother that is really doing it on a whole nother level when it comes to business. I am inspired by his efforts and what he has going on, man. So I just really want to welcome him to the I'm Josh Saying universe. I got my guy with me, my brother, Marcus Whitney.
What's up, bro?
I'm good, man. How you doing, bro?
I'm great, man.
Great. Happy New Year. Man, Happy New Year, bro.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't seen you since 2019.
Because it's been that long.
It's been that long, man.
It's been that long.
And
yeah.
Pandemics and tornadoes and just life.
Life
just happened so much. But man, what you been up to, man?
Well, trying to stay healthy, right? And pretty much heads down and focused. I published this book, Create and Orchestrate, in June of 2020.
Yep.
And then pretty quickly after that went heads down. I was doing a podcast. You were on the podcast a couple times. But then I kind of went heads down working on a fund at our venture capital business.
Yeah.
And, so I've been doing that for the last year and a half.
Gotcha. And we're going to talk about that fund, but I really want to just dive into your story. Okay. Like, I feel like your story is so interesting and unique. And, when we was, I guess probably like 2015, I started hearing about Marcus Whitney. And I didn't know what to expect. All right. So everybody was like, man, you got to meet this guy, Marcus Whitney. You got to meet this guy, Marcus Whitney. And when I met Marcus Whitney, I was like, man, this is a soul brother. This is a, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? This is a brother. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I felt like, I'm like, man, this is a brother. So when I met you, bro, and just really got to know you, I was like, man, this is inspiration that everybody needs to hear.
Yeah.
And so just tell us a little bit about your story, where you come from. Yeah. And just let's lead up to this amazing fun that you have going on. But let's talk about your story a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. And I went to school at UVA. And when I got there, I immediately clicked up with dudes who were upperclassmen. Yeah. And so all I was doing was just like hip hop and hanging out.
Yeah.
And that didn't last very long. So, about 2 years in, I had to, they sent me packing. They were like, listen, you're not here for school. So, you're not going to take up someone else's, slot. I went back to New York and I was just in a real wandering phase of my life, sort of late teens, early 20s. Found myself down in Atlanta, and then started a family, and then that was when everything kind of got real. I was waiting tables, I was doing spoken word and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we had one kid, the second one was on the way, and then we were kind of not sure that we have the community we need for 2 small kids, and we're not making that much money.
Yeah.
And my ex, boy's mom, had she had grown up in Nashville, and she had a best friend here from high school. She went to McGavick. So she was like, look, we can go there, at least have, friends. So we came here Labor Day 2000, drove into town. I was working at Rio Bravo Cantina in Buckhead.
Yeah.
And so when we came into town, I had my uniform. We drove right down Broadway to West End. There was a Rio Bravo there. It's now Stony River or whatever, but it used to be Rio Bravo.
Sure enough.
Yeah. And so drove into town and I walked in the front door. They were slammed. I was like, I'm in the system. And so, my very first day in town, I was waiting tables and Nashville has been that kind of story for me for 21 years, right? Just opportunity has always been, I just connect Nashville with opportunity.
Yeah.
And as long as I was willing to open my mouth,
Yeah.
And then back it up with some work.
Yeah.
The opportunity has pretty much always been here.
Man, now let's just sit in on this, because this is the inspiration that I really want to really dive into. Came into town, started waiting tables.
Mm-hmm.
And so from Rio, you went to, did you go to Belmead? Was it?
Le Peep, yeah.
Le Peep.
Yeah, Le Peep.
Yeah.
I was working both jobs. So I was working, doubles, because Le Peep was mostly like early mornings for breakfast. And then, they had a really great weekend business. And then Rio Bravo was mostly like a lunch into like late evening. So I just worked as many shifts as I could, man. So generally speaking, 6.5 days I was on, working. Yeah.
So Le Peep, we was working in Rio.
Yep.
We was just grinding, just trying to take care of your family.
That's it.
And really, so when did the light click? Like when it was like, all right, I'm waiting tables, but when did you start to create and say, I see something bigger for myself? Or when was that moment? Because we all had that moment. It was like, no, this ain't it. So when was that moment for you?
It really didn't take long. I mean, for me, it was once we got here, we got stable. We were staying in town suites up on Old Hickory Boulevard in Bellevue, right? So we at least have like a week-to-week spot where we're staying. As soon as I stabilized that, and I had a couple of jobs, and I was, there was nothing about that felt comfortable. You know what I'm saying? That was immediately like, okay, we have to get out of here into something much more stable. And, waiting tables, no matter how much effort you put in, it still can be a roller coaster. You know what I mean? Depending on whether or not people decide they want to tip or not, or if the restaurant gets full or not. So I knew I needed to move towards something more stable. And I also knew I had to overcome the deficit of not having a college degree. Right. And so, it was the year 2000, right? So this .com boom is happening.
Yep.
And I was seeing all these young kids that were dropping out of high school and were getting paid six figures to go build websites, right?
Yep.
And so I was like, man, if those kids can do that, without a high school degree, I certainly can teach myself that same skill and then hopefully, get a job. And I don't know if I need to make six figures, but man, if I could just make a solid 5-figure, gig, that would be great, and get some health insurance, for the kids, right?
Yeah.
So that was it, man. My uncle was a programmer at IBM back in the day. He gave me an IBM PC Junior when I was like 9 years old.
Okay.
And so, I had that memory of working on that. And so, yeah, it was just like what I just knew I had to continue to move, man. I was not comfortable. There was no comfort there. So I had to just think, what can I do with what I have,
Gotcha. So you was working at Le Peep.
Yep.
You said, so what brought you back to that 9th grade IBM? So you saw what was going on in the kind of ecosystem.
Yeah.
It was like, you know what, I can tap into this.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I knew that others who didn't have the credentials were able to get a steady job.
Gotcha.
And that was all I needed to know. Right.
Gotcha.
It's like, I can figure that out. Right. So I did. So I went to Borders bookstore and would buy books, and in between tables I would read the books, and when I was home and not working, I would work on this old Gateway PC that we had, and just teach myself how to build websites and using languages that are now no longer in existence, but
right.
But back then were kind of a big deal. Flash and Cold Fusion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some JavaScript, some things like that. And it took me about 8 months from like the moment I got to town before I got my first programming job at HealthStream.
Okay. So how did you get connected to that opportunity? Did you apply, or did you meet somebody when you was waiting tables to kind of connect you to that opportunity?
It was a little bit of both.
Okay.
So I learned that Cummins Station was where all the .com companies in Nashville were at that time. It was one building where you could find all the cool .com companies. And HealthStream was certainly one of the bigger ones that was there. They were about to go public. So that was like part of it. I was going there. I was going to these user group meetings, you know what I'm saying? And like learning from employed programmers and just like watching how they moved and what technologies they were excited about. So I picked up a lot through that. But then the other part of it was I was waiting tables at Le Peep in Belmead, and like coming out from out of town,
You didn't understand Belmead.
I didn't have context, right, for like where I was and who I was like,
connecting with.
Yeah.
Sure.
Not even connected with, who I'm bringing coffee and eggs to. You know what I'm saying? But I was bringing coffee and eggs to, the Frist family and people like that, right? You know what I mean? And so I would end up hearing and getting directed, hey, my nephew Bobby's got a company called HealthStream. You should go down there and just check them out. And so it was really sort of a combination of both of those things,
Yeah.
sort of getting pointed in the right direction, but also there was a community of programmers that was already there that were freely giving away the game, they were giving away the information. And so I just took advantage of those two things. And I think even like it is today, as you know, with Pivot Tech, there's always been, and there probably will always be, a shortage of technical talent. It's just a shortage of it,
Very
and
much so.
this is something, before there was a code academy or boot camps or anything like that. For me, it was having my back against the corner, you know what I'm saying? And needing to fight out and needing to find what's the avenue. You know what I mean? But that same opportunity has been 20 years. I'm sure it was happening before I took advantage of it, and I think it'll be happening far into the future.
Man, so let's just really, for the listeners, because your story from college dropout, coming to wait tables with your family, finding out, man, I can tap into a skill set that can get me up out of my current situation. That skill set was programming. Learned that programming, then went to HealthStreams.
Yep.
How long were you there at HealthStreams?
A year.
So a year at HealthStreams.
A year, yeah.
From HealthStreams, where did you go?
I went to a company called KEYNOTE, where I was for a year. That was a better run than my HealthStream run.
Okay.
And then I left from there, and I landed at Emma. So I was there. I was the 5th employee at Emma. Yeah.
So was Emma the I guess the place where your career kind of took off?
For sure.
Okay,
for sure.
So let's talk about the Emma.
But it's kind of interesting, right? It's like it's the place where my career took off. But actually, HealthStream is really the place where my career took off. You know what I mean? I mean, I wouldn't have been ready for Emma if it wasn't for HealthStream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I always want to, give HealthStream its respect for what it did for me. It was really, it was the first gig, no question. But Emma was the place. Emma was the first startup where I came in, and I was an early employee, and I got to. Build a team, and I was elevated to a partner, and the co-founders Clint Smith and Will Weaver granted me and other people who came in early, it was 4 of us, granted us all equity in the company, and not small equity slugs, big equity slugs. Like you would never see someone offer you the kind of equity today that they offered us in the company. Then it just didn't happen.
Was it an equity play because they really didn't have the resources to pay you the salary that you needed, or was it just it just a combination of both, though? Just their vibe.
I think it was more their vibe. I think look, there's always, just from the pure economic perspective, you're always trying to incentivize your top players to be more invested in the business. And so by making us partners and by granting us equity, we were on the inside. We were owners of the company, like legit. And so there was definitely a smart economic play there. But when you look at the size of the grants, you have to credit that to just who they are as people, because it was not normal to do that. Yeah.
Now, how long was your run there before
4
you
years?
So
4 years. Yeah. Great. 4 fast, great years. Like when I got there, the platform, they really had a prototype of the platform, and they were incredible designers and writers and branding people, but the technology wasn't really very solid yet. And so me and one other guy there, Jackson Miller, we had to rewrite the entire system, and they had existing customers. And so it was very, very difficult, really probably about a half a year. It was really, really difficult to rewrite the system. But once we did, then, leveraging the great brand and the great writing and the great design, the business really did take off. And so, I remember when we sort of made the first $1 million and, stopped burning money and were able to pay people and, kind of going from 5-6 employees to 50 employees, and that whole process, that was where I got the bug. Right?
Okay. I was going to ask.
That was where I got the bug. It was like, oh, this is dope. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like, startups are fun, you know what I mean, from a culture perspective and like the value creation perspective, and it just the purpose you feel in your life building this thing. It was that was the real foundation.
Okay, gotcha. So that's when you got that taste of
for sure.
You know what? This entrepreneur life or this startup life is something I really want to pursue and put my head down and do.
Yep.
All right. So from Emma to, I think, was it Moon Toast?
No, there was a little stop in between the two.
Okay. Go.
There was a stop in between two. So after 4 years, I'd kind of hit the ceiling there. You know what I mean? The company was clearly moving into a a mid-sized company. It was getting ready to get over 100 employees. I mean, it was at 50, but it was very quickly going to go from 50 to 100. That was, you know what I mean? Like that was the next evolution. And that wasn't all that exciting to me. You know what I mean? And more than anything, I wanted to go do what I had seen Clint and Will do. I wanted to like go build something from scratch, right? But I didn't know what to do. So I started it was really a dev shop, you know what I mean? It was called Remarkable Wit, and I like hired developers from around town, and we had a lot of fun. We were building technology for entrepreneurs that were launching their own startups, and we had built like 3 different technology platforms. One of them was Moontoast. Okay. And so that became that became one of my first really, really tough lessons in entrepreneurship was concentration risk. Gotcha. That one client, so our business model was we would get paid cash, but we would discount a little bit of cash in exchange for equity. Gotcha. But that one project was a very ambitious project. What it wanted to achieve was ambitious, and so it kept raising money, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. As it kept doing that, it kept taking up more and more of our resources. Yeah. And I lost the thread when we basically became Moontoast. You know what I'm saying? It was like they became so much of our business that they then had the leverage to say, you need to just shut all the rest of this stuff down and come over here, be the CTO, right? You know, we'll give you some equity and kind of we'll do that. And so that happened. Gotcha. And that was actually I would say that was a loss, and it was the first loss where like I basically went back to having a job. You know what I mean? Like I was positioned in the public as the co-founder of the company and all this other kind of stuff, but wasn't the CEO. I didn't have a board seat. You know, my equity position was 5% or less. You know what I'm saying? So it was more like a well-compensated management team member. It was not entrepreneurship. You know, I mean, I was working at it like an entrepreneur would, but if you looked at the dynamics of how everything was set up, it wasn't. You know, but that was, you know, it's my fault. You know what I'm saying? That was the beginning of me understanding this entrepreneur thing is pretty tricky. You know, and you have to really understand. You have to understand the pitfalls. You have to understand the rules of the road. And if you don't understand that stuff, you can get pretty messed up. You know, so that was my first big lesson.
Come on, man. So we went from Moontoast. How do we get or jump into the Jumpstart Foundry, the VC firm? So if y'all just tracking this journey, man, college dropout to now getting into the startup space, working at some startups. Now we're getting into the VC space. Yeah. So, now, first of all, how are you learning? Are you just learning based upon observation, or is this something that you're going and studying and these are the spaces that you are kind of planning to do? Or is this something that it's always like God divine that orchestrates the steps to get you into these certain things?
I mean, I think the God part is just the situations you find yourself in. That's not like what you do with it, though. Like what you do with it is you. You know what I'm saying? That's you. Sure. And so, you know, I think that, and we talked about this when you first launched Pivot Tech, because you had no background in it. You know what I'm saying?
Background at all.
But the wonderful thing about entrepreneurship is you can learn on the job, right? You kind of get paid to learn, not in cash, but in long-term value creation, right? Yep. And so I just kind of really got in the habit and never got out of the habit when I was waiting tables and teaching myself how to code, of always just feeling like it's part of my responsibility to always be learning, right? Yes. Always be learning the next thing. And especially, I especially had that obligation when I understood more about how the world works. So once I understood startups, I wanted to move more into the startup space. Once I started to understand venture, once I understood venture, and this is important, Emma was not a venture-backed company. Yeah, they financed it through the bank and through mortgaging their homes and stuff like that. They didn't have any venture investors, not in the time that I was there. Once they were much further down the road, they took on growth venture capital, but to get it off the ground, they didn't take venture. So I never had any exposure to it at Emma. So I had to learn that sort of on the fly in a really sort of rough way. But once I understood it and I looked at the whole space, I was like, wow, man, venture is so it's so critical to the evolution of technology and business that we see today. Yeah. Like if I don't understand that part of it, I'm just missing such a big part of it.
Yeah.
And so what I started doing was getting in where I could, which was the cheapest possible venture was angel investing, and then the creation of accelerators, which all really started in 2005, 2007, 2009. Okay. Y Combinator, Techstars in particular.
Yeah.
So Y Combinator was 2005, Techstars was kind of 2007. Jumpstart Foundry was 2009. So we were, probably one of the first 100 accelerators in the country when we came to market. And it was something I could do nights and weekends while I was doing Moon Toast. So, from 2009 to 2014, I didn't get paid for doing Jumpstart Foundry. I didn't actually create any value for myself or for my family, but I earned the position to be Vic Gatto's long-term partner in Jumpstart Foundry. So he was the founder of it. And
okay,
he was
gotcha.
already a venture. He was already a VC.
Okay,
right.
Here we go.
And so he started it. He brought 20 other people together, and we all threw in a little bit of money, and we spent our time on it nights and weekends. But there was no money to be made because it wasn't even his main thing. He had a real venture fund that he was working
managing.
For. Yeah, he was managing.
Okay, got you.
So it was a nights and weekends thing for so many people. You know what I mean? We were trying to make real money. We're trying to make real investments, but at the end of the day, it was not. It didn't have the management fees or anything to justify anyone's full time. So, 2009 to 2014, I'm working on this thing while I'm also doing Moon Toast.
Yeah.
Trying to grow it, trying to grow the brand, trying to make it be successful, but ultimately positioning myself that when 2014, 2015 hit, and Vic said, "Hey, I want to do this full time." He said, "And I want you to, come do it with me," right? And so and gave me almost equal shares in the whole enterprise.
Wow.
And so I left Moon Toast. He pretty shortly after left the venture firm that he was a partner in. In 2015, we started this journey of which was then Jumpstart Foundry. Now it's Jumpstart Health Investors. We have 3 different fund families underneath it. And one of the decisions we made in 2015 was to go 100% healthcare because we just knew from the time we spent running the accelerator that at the time it would be really difficult for Nashville to be strong as an early stage investor if it didn't play to the strengths of its ecosystem. And I think a lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people felt like we sort of abandoned all these other companies, but we had to do what was viable, and pure tech. Quite frankly, it just wasn't viable. There just wasn't enough there to do it. Going into the future of Nashville, it feels like we have an opportunity to now still have having some of those funds. But in 2015, we needed to be all healthcare, and that bet, really pretty much played out. Yeah, it's
paid off.
Yeah,
so let's just briefly. So from 2009 to 2014, what type of companies were you all looking to invest in, or did you invest in, or did you put money in?
Yeah. So I think we invested in a little over 40 companies. We invested $15K per company in exchange for 7% of the company. These were ideas on a napkin for the most part.
Okay.
Something like 8 of those companies were healthcare companies, but the rest were all sorts of stuff: e-commerce, devices.
Did any of them do well enough to cash you all out?
We had a couple of wins in there, but for the most part, it's pretty crazy, right? It's like, obviously we're going to get to this fund that I'm doing now, but I've had people who, they reach out and they're like, "Hey man, tell me about what did it take to raise this fund?" Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, okay, it was 16 months of active fundraising.
Yeah.
But it was 7 years of building Jumpstart Health Investors to be credible enough that when that moment hit, I could actually raise that. And really is 10, 11 years, maybe 12 years of the entire Jumpstart experience. So, you're talking about 4 or 5 years of doing it basically for free, making no money.
Right.
And then in 2015, our first year of Jumpstart, we raised $1 million. So in the first 5 years of the accelerator to 2009, 2014, I don't think we invested $500,000 across 40 companies.
Okay.
Because it's $15K a piece.
Right.
It's no money.
No money at all.
It's no money. we decide we're going to increase our investment to 100K. Okay, great. 100K, 150K, and in year one, 2015, we raised a total of $1 million. And the next year we raised a little over $2 million.
Yeah.
And the next year we raised our first, significant fund, $20 million.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm just sort of making the point that like this fund that I just closed is bigger than all of the funds that we raised from 2009.
Come on, man.
But that's the curve.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the curve. And I think so many people just don't, there's no overnight successes, man.
There's never overnight success.
There's no overnight successes.
And so just for the beginner, let's just talk about, just define venture capital.
Yeah.
And then really talk about how does that process work. So, because we just raised, so if you all haven't seen the news, you've been living under a rock, Marcus and his company just raised $55 million to invest in Black-led healthcare companies. Let me say that again. He raised $55 million to invest in Black-led healthcare companies. Now, from
Black founded and led too.
Black founded and led
Yeah.
healthcare companies. And that's just remarkable. I remember when you was talking about it. Mm-hmm. But it was like you talked about it and it was like, yo, Josh, I'm about to disappear. It was like, you know what? So really, let's talk about, so give me the definitions of what
venture capital.
Venture
how
capital.
it works, yeah.
And then we're going to dive into this fund because the book, if y'all don't see this book, it's called Create and Orchestrate. It really dives into venture capital. It dives into entrepreneurship and pretty much lies the key to all the answers that you may have. You need to go get this book. But let's just give a high level of VC.
How does VC work?
Yeah.
So venture capital is investing in privately held companies. Okay, so not public, not on the stock market, and to invest in privately held companies, the SEC, right, which is the body that sort of regulates all the securities and exchanges, basically says you have to be an accredited investor. So that's a qualification that unfortunately locks out a lot of people from being able to invest in these types of companies. There are some new things around crowdfunding that have expanded it a little bit, but generally speaking, and certainly historically, most people have not been able to participate in this industry. And so venture is kind of everything from an individual who happens to be an accredited investor making investments in a privately held company that's generally referred to as angel investing, to what most people will think of when they think of venture investing, which is a professional fund that is managed by a fund manager, where they raise money from accredited investors or sort of the next level up from that, which is qualified purchasers, and then they manage those funds for the purpose of making investments into privately held companies, with the idea that over the course of some investment period, they will generate outsized returns from what they might be able to get from investing in other asset classes. Asset classes would be everything from the stock market to real estate to bonds to whatever, right? So the reason why venture capital has become more and more popular is because it's behind pretty much all of the big companies that we talk about today. So we talk about Amazon, we talk about Facebook, we talk about Apple. All these companies receive venture capital, and the returns are really, really significant when you compare them to so many other industries, and it's because they're what venture capital enables a company to do is build something significant in advance of revenue. You know what I mean? So you may need money to build out a team and to build out some really great technology or to build out some infrastructure or to, buy a bunch of property to build out something. You need the investment before you can actually start to generate the revenue. But usually those types of opportunities can be winners in a particular market. They can take over a market. They can displace others in a market. And so that's really what venture capital is about. It's about making these private private equity investments, but doing it with the goal of making outsized returns.
Got you. So when you all onboard companies, what is that process? Do you do all the due diligence? Does you all have departments that do the due diligence? Like, how do you all get to invest and say, this is a company we want to invest in?
Yeah, I think there are lots of philosophies out there around how people handle everything you just said, right? There's no one way that this works. At Jumpstart, specifically Jumpstart Nova, which is the fund I just raised, my partner Catherine and I are principally responsible for doing diligence. But we do have lots of advisors. We've got great individual investors. We've got great strategic limited partners that help us in that process. And we're also in the process right now of putting together a job description for an associate. So we will hire somebody to really help us dig into the research and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we as the partners of the fund, we are principally responsible for the diligence, right? I mean, we're the ones who make the decisions on whether or not we're going to invest in a company. We have to manage that company through to a successful outcome. So we can't delegate diligence away to somebody else. We can recruit other people to help us in that process, but we need to understand the deal ourselves.
Gotcha. So we have the Jumpstart Nova.
Yep.
This is the fund that is going to go to Black-led and Black-founded healthcare companies. Have you all decided how many that you all going to invest in? When you raise a fund, do you liquidate the fund? Meaning, do I invest all $55 million? Do I immediately put it out there in the marketplace? Immediately?
That's a great question.
Or is it like strategic year after year investing and this is that fund?
That's a great question. So again, different funds handle this differently, but generally speaking, there is a schedule that the fund managers will call capital from the investors. So generally speaking, you would not have all of the capital up front.
Gotcha.
Because, and the reason for that is you only need the capital when you're sort of in striking range of making an investment.
Gotcha.
You don't need to be holding on to someone's capital when you're not going to make an investment, because quite frankly, it's their capital and they can use that in other places, right? At that time. And so, you have a capital call schedule and you have an agreement that's in the limited partnership agreement with your investors that sort of explains when you will call capital and how that will all work, right?
Gotcha.
So for us, we've decided to be fairly disciplined with our schedule and really sort of time it out over the course of our entire investment period, which is 5 years, including the sort of year zero, which was the year that we were quiet, but we were raising the funds. So we've already had year zero, and then we have 4 more years of the investment period, which will be calling capital and for the purpose of making investments.
Gotcha. And what's your target of how many companies you want to invest in with this fund?
Right now, we think around 20.
Okay.
That's kind of what we're thinking. But the market is pretty dynamic and lots of things are constantly changing. So but at the moment we feel like it's 20.
And then do you determine the investment, or does the person looking for investment determine the investment?
That's great. So generally speaking, the management team, the founders of the company, they will say, hey, we are looking to raise X amount of money at a valuation of Y.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if they have secured what's called a lead investor, then that lead investor will have come to terms with them.
Yeah.
And that will set what the terms of the investment round will look like. If they have not secured a lead investment and they want us to lead, then we will engage in a negotiation with them around what that investment size will look like and what the valuation would be. So it depends on whether or not we're the lead investor or we are following along another lead investor as to whether or not we are determining, in collaboration with the founders, we are determining the investment round.
Gotcha. And I don't think we covered this, but what was the genius behind saying, I'm going to raise a fund for Black-led, Black-founded healthcare companies? Like, what was that moment? Was it the George Floyd? What was that? Was saying, I'm about to go raise this money because traditionally black people really don't play into the healthcare space.
Yeah.
On that level. So what was that moment of, I'm going to do this to change whatever that you may have been seeing in the marketplace?
Yeah. So I'm in a small cohort of, broadly, you have the entire venture capital industry, and you have generalists, which are funds or individuals who invest industry agnostic. It doesn't matter. And then you have industry specific funds, right? And then you have stage specific funds. Okay. So, you have healthcare funds, and then you have funds that do early stage, middle, late stage, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a cohort of, black fund managers who are in early stage healthcare. Okay. And there's not a lot of us in the whole country. Yeah. There are far more early stage healthcare funds than there are black healthcare fund managers. Gotcha. And so enough that I knew what the landscape was. I knew, generally speaking, how underallocated this specific group of founders were. Okay. Right. And if you just sort of say all things are equal amongst demographics, right? So there's no superiority in terms of competency between men and women, or between people of different ethnic or racial backgrounds, whatever. Then you realize that there is a high quality talent pool that is not being tapped. Gotcha. That was pretty much it. And so then you get into, okay, well, why did I say exclusively? Yeah. And this is a really, it's still debated. It's like, even though I successfully raised the fund, it's still sort of debated, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. But so I've got a chapter in this book that says different is better than better. That's the name of the chapter. Mm-hmm. Because I happen to have a belief that you as long as you're not doing it to offend people, mm-hmm. or to disrespect people, being in the middle is not great, right? Yeah. So I feel differently about politics. I feel like being in the center in the center with politics is actually probably more needed now than ever. Right. But I think in business, being in the middle is not great. And what I was seeing in the market was a lot of funds committing to allocate some percentage to people of color, or even broader underrepresented founders. Yeah. It was to me, it wasn't clear enough. Yeah. Right. And I don't mean clear enough for me. Like this is not a philosophical thing. I don't care what it is you do, but I thought for the market, for the market of limited partners that were looking to place capital, for me, it felt like it can't get any clearer than saying, I'm launching the first venture fund in America to invest exclusively in black founded and led companies. It's very straightforward, right? Yes. And so it's hard to ask me what does that mean? You know what that means. Right. You know what I'm saying? You know what that means. Then you can start to ask me questions. So I'll tell you what the number one question that I got was, are there enough black founded and led companies out there? There it is. Reasonable question. Because there's not a lot of data, because they haven't been invested in. Right. Okay, so if that was the biggest objection I had to overcome, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. You see what I'm saying? That's pretty good. And so that was really it, man. I've definitely had people, very respectable people who have done very well in the healthcare innovation and venture space, tell me this was absolutely the wrong approach. Absolutely the wrong approach. But I knew that in this moment that we were in, that there were absolutely individuals and organizations that were looking for clarity on this, that were looking to be able to align themselves with something that was clear and unapologetic. Yes. About doing this kind of work. This work. You know what I'm saying? Yes. And so, that's
good, man. I'm just so, it just makes me proud that you did not tap dance around it. You was direct and to the point. This is for, because you know how we get caught, like black people get thrown in the minority or the underrepresented, but then there's so many groups that convolute it that it's not direct.
Yeah.
And so for you to be so direct, to say this is what it's for, this is what we're gonna do, and I'm going to go out here and find the talent. I'm going to find the people that have not been getting the investment that they need to scale on the level that they need to go to. And that is just so remarkable to me. I think that is just visionary. It's game changing. And so I don't want people to flood your inbox at all. What is the process in which someone finds out more information about the fund, the requirements? Because, you know, if you're just starting your business, this is probably not the fund for you. People, they see 55 million, they see healthcare, and they're like, well, I'm going to start a healthcare company. I can just apply. But like, I know there are requirements, and how do someone gets that information to find out about the fund and that information?
Please go to our website, jumpstartnova.com, just like it sounds, jumpstartnova.com. We've got a lot of information there. We wanted to be really clear. I mean, this is one thing I will say. My partner Catherine and I, we talked about this quite a bit before we launched. We understand that beyond our responsibility to make great investments, which is our primary responsibility, right? Make great investments, support great founders, and generate great returns. Because we are a first, we did put ourselves in a position where we believe we have a responsibility to be able to help the overall ecosystem. And we don't exactly know how we're going to do that, but we do understand our responsibility doesn't start and stop with the investing part of it, right? And so, what I don't want to do is I don't want to discourage anybody from looking into the fund, right? I want you to look into it. We have a partnership with Jumpstart Foundry, which does invest earlier than we do. And Jumpstart Foundry is ensuring that a pretty decent percentage of their cohort every year will be Black founded and led. And so, do go check out this site. Do dig in. Do learn. And don't feel like you can't reach out. You know what I'm saying? $55 million is great. It is nowhere near the amount of capital that's needed. That's needed, right? Sure. And so we've been abundantly clear about that. We know that. Everybody knows that. Our partners know that, and we just want to be clear to the market. We're not the end all be all. We are simply trying to shine a light on so Nova in Latin means newly visible star. And so that's why we named it that, because a nova has been in the sky forever. You just now see it. That's dope. It was in the darkness before. And then it shows up, but it was, when you see it, it's been there. It's been forever. There. So that's the inspiration behind the name of the fund. Man, this is so amazing, man. This is such inspiration. We didn't even talk about the soccer team, but you're investing in a soccer team as well. The book covers everything but Nova. It doesn't really cover Nova because it just happened. I'm telling you, this is something that you need in your library. Is it on Audible? No, not yet. I gotta. So I'm releasing a second edition, and I'm gonna go down to Austin and record my audiobook. Okay. So, when I tell you that this book is something that you need, it is something that you need, man. He is really changing the game, and this is just inspiration. Whatever hand that you are dealt, understand that you can make moves to make sure that you and your family are set for life, man. And I'm so inspired by his story. He's a good friend, man, but Marcus is doing incredible things in the community, not just in the Nashville community, but around the world. And this fund is going to change the game. And it's going to be like, we'll look back 5 years from now and we'll see all these big, huge, Black-led, Black-founded healthcare companies that are doing amazing work because of your vision to see that need and being and grabbing resources to invest
in these companies, man. So thank you so very much. How do they get in contact with you if they want to follow you on social media? First of all, are we doing social media again?
I'm warming back up, man. It's hard. It takes a second to get back to it. I'm getting back there, but I'm at Marcus Whitney everywhere. So,
okay. Yeah, Marcus Whitney was really dominating the content space for a long time, and then when he started raising his fund, he just went ghost.
Yeah, I'm ghost.
But hey, that's what focus is, man. So thank y'all for tuning in to the I'm Josh Saying podcast. Man, hopefully you got some information and knowledge that you need to make your life better. All right? Peace.
I'm Josh